Picture a Saturday morning farmer's market. Two women, same age, standing in the same line for coffee. The first one arrived in a 2-year-old white Range Rover, logged it in the app for parking validation, and is wearing a handbag that a single glance tells you cost more than most people's rent. She's telling the woman next to her about the kitchen renovation. Marble countertops, custom cabinetry, the whole thing. It's going to be stunning. The contractor starts next month. The second woman pulled up in a decade-old Subaru with a cracked rear bumper. She's wearing a plain fleece and carrying a canvas tote she's had for years. She doesn't say anything while she waits. She's already thinking about what she needs to pick up before heading home. One of these two women has a net worth above $2 million. The other is running a negative savings rate, spending more than she earns. And the kitchen renovation is going on a home equity line of credit at an interest rate that her contractor definitely didn't mention. And if you bet on the Range Rover, you bet wrong. Real wealth in America doesn't drive what you expect. It doesn't dress the way you'd guess. And it almost never talks about itself. Over the next half hour, you're going to learn exactly how to spot it. 10 signs that someone has quietly built serious money, even when everything on the surface says otherwise.
Before we get into the list, hold on to one idea, because it explains all 10 signs at once. And without it, the signs just look like quirks. Income is not wealth. Income is what flows in. It's loud. It's visible. And our entire culture is built to show it off. Wealth is what stays. The gap between what you earn and what you spend, multiplied by time. Those are two different things, and most people spend their entire lives optimizing for the first one, while the second one quietly decides their future. Think about a dentist pulling in $400,000 a year, who finances 2 cars, carries a mortgage on the absolute edge of what the bank approved, and spends nearly every dollar to maintain a life that looks exactly the way a $400,000 income should look. Enormous income. Almost no wealth. Now think about an electrician who earns $72,000, has been automating 20% of every paycheck into investments since his late 20s, and carries no debt except a modest mortgage he's paying ahead of schedule. Much smaller income. Quietly building real wealth. Social media only makes this harder to see. Every feed is engineered to show you the income, the kitchen, the vacation, the car, and never the brokerage statement underneath. The genuinely rich learn to ignore the performance and play the quiet game instead. What follows are the footprints that quiet game leaves behind. Sign 1. Their primary car tells you absolutely nothing. The fastest way to misjudge someone's financial position is to look at what they drive. Because the relationship between cars and money in this country runs almost exactly opposite to what the culture has trained you to expect. Here's where the market actually sits. The average new vehicle in America crossed $50,000 for the first time recently. The average monthly payment on a new car is now around $750. Nearly 1 in 5 buyers is paying over $1,000 a month, and more than a quarter are stretching those loans to 6 or 7 years just to make the numbers work on a budget that can't actually absorb the purchase. People doing that are not building wealth. They are financing an appearance and paying compounding interest for the privilege of it. The quietly wealthy move in the other direction, reliably and consistently. Research going back to the original Millionaire Next Door studies found that the typical American millionaire spends roughly 1% of their net worth on their vehicle. On a $2 million net worth, that's a $20,000 car, often bought a few years used and driven for a decade. Toyota, Honda, and Ford keep appearing at the top of the list of brands the genuinely wealthy actually drive. Not because they can't afford anything else, because they've done the math on depreciation and decided they'd rather own the appreciating asset and let someone else absorb the first 4 years of the loss. Marcus has been driving the same silver Camry for 11 years. There's a faded parking sticker from a job he left in 2018 still on the windshield. He never got around to scraping it off. To anyone looking, he reads as a guy who is holding on. Careful, maybe a little tight. What they don't know is that the $40,000 he didn't spend on a new car in 2019 went straight into an index fund instead. At a 7% return, that single decision is now worth over $70,000 and climbing. The faded sticker isn't neglect. It's a receipt from a choice that quietly funded his future. Sign 2. Their house is smaller than their income suggests. Drive through the neighborhoods people associate with success. The gated streets, the long driveways, the houses with enough square footage that rooms go unused for months. And what you're often looking at is a collection of stretched budgets hiding behind very nice doors. The genuinely wealthy tend to do the reverse. They buy the modest house on the unremarkable street, often well below what the bank told them they qualified for, and then they let the difference compound elsewhere for 20 or 30 years. The most famous example in the world is still in Omaha. A man who could purchase any property on earth and has lived in the same 5-bedroom home since 1958. Bought then for $31,500. He has said publicly that the house has served its purpose, and he sees no reason to change that. That instinct doesn't live only at the billionaire tier. The retired school principal with a 7-figure portfolio almost always built it in a 3-bedroom ranch, not a showcase home. Every extra bedroom is more property tax, more to insure, more to heat, more furniture for rooms that don't get used. More importantly, it's the exact dollars that could have been compounding somewhere useful, redirected instead into maintaining a house that performs financial success rather than building it. Priya bought a 2-bedroom condo when she was 34, well under her pre-approval limit. Her colleagues assumed she was waiting to buy something real. 8 years later, she's still in the condo. What changed is that her investment account crossed $400,000 last year. The colleagues who bought the bigger houses are still talking about their mortgages. Priya doesn't talk about her mortgage because she paid it off early. The house didn't impress anyone. That was never the point. Sign 3. Their clothes and watch give away absolutely nothing. Spend enough time learning to read this, and it becomes almost funny how often the surface deceives. The genuinely wealthy are notoriously hard to place by appearance. The logos are gone. The watch, if they wear one at all, is more likely to be something sensible they've had for years than a status signal designed to be recognized from across a room. Their clothes are plain, well-made, and often slightly unfashionable, not because they can't afford trends, but because they stopped caring about trends somewhere along the way, and the saving on that particular line item was substantial. Compare that to how visible luxury actually flows. Research on luxury goods purchasing has consistently found that the heaviest spenders on conspicuous brands are not the wealthy, but the aspirational, middle and upper middle earners who use visible logos to signal a status they're still climbing toward. The truly affluent, across study after study, skew toward quality without display. There's a name for it now in wealth circles: stealth wealth, and it has quietly become the dominant aesthetic among people who have actually arrived, while the loud logo has started to read as something else: effort, aspiration, the need to be believed. Theodora runs a regional chain of dry cleaning businesses she built over 20 years, and recently sold for just under $4 million. She shops at the same 3 stores she's shopped at for a decade. Everything fits well. Nothing is recognizable. When she traveled for the closing dinner on the sale, someone at the table assumed she was the attorney's assistant. She found it genuinely funny. If you need a stranger to confirm your financial position by reading your sleeve, Theodora's view is that you're not as secure in it as you think. The blankness in the outfit is frequently the tell. Sign 4. They go completely quiet when money comes up. Pay attention at any social gathering to who narrates their own spending. Someone usually does, mentions what the trip ran, what the renovation is going to cost, what the bonus came in at. The genuinely wealthy are almost never that person. They have a consistent and unusual habit of saying nothing when money enters the conversation. Prices, income, purchases, the topic drifts past them, and they let it go without anchoring to it. This isn't accidental, and it isn't just modesty. Part of it is practical. Talking openly about money invites comparison, requests, resentment, and unwanted attention. But the larger reason is that for people who actually have it, money stopped being exciting a long time ago. It became infrastructure, the system running in the background that makes everything else possible. Nobody gets animated every time the plumbing works. Walter sold a small trucking business he built over 28 years. Ask him what he does now, and you get not much and a small shrug. Spend an afternoon with him, and you would never guess he owns the building the business still operates out of, collects monthly rent from the new owner, and hasn't needed to think carefully about a purchase in over a decade. He orders the second cheapest thing on the menu. He splits an appetizer. He lets every conversation about money just roll on past him without touching it. People who loudly perform financial success are usually still climbing, or still pretending to be higher up than they are. The ones who actually got there tend to go quiet, because there is nothing left to prove, and a long list of reasons to stay low profile. Silence about money is not the absence of money. Often it's the presence of quite a lot of it. Sign 5. Their money is invisible because it's always working. This is the heart of the entire list. The sign that most completely separates someone who looks wealthy from someone who actually is. The genuinely rich keep the bulk of their money in places you will never see at a dinner party, never notice in a parking lot, and never encounter in casual conversation. And they feed those places consistently, on autopilot, year after year, regardless of what the market is doing or how they feel about it on any given Tuesday. Here's what the system actually allows in 2026. You can contribute up to $23,500 into a 401k, another $7,000 into an IRA. If you're on a qualifying health plan, up to $8,550 into a health savings account as a family, a triple tax-advantaged account that gives you a deduction going in, tax-free growth while it sits, and tax-free withdrawals for medical costs coming out. Many employers add a match on top of contributions, pushing combined limits well past $70,000 a year, and the quietly wealthy don't stop there. Once those accounts are full, they keep going into a taxable brokerage account. Broad index funds, low costs, no touching. The design choice that makes all of it work is automation. The money leaves the paycheck before it ever hits checking. It's invested the same day. They never see it, which means they never miss it, which means they never spend it on something visible. Nadia is an occupational therapist at a regional hospital. She drives a hand-me-down sedan, packs lunch 5 days a week, and most of her coworkers quietly assume she's careful because she has to be. What they don't see is that she's been maxing every available account since she was 29. Last year, her net worth crossed $800,000. Her wealth is invisible because it lives entirely inside account statements, not in anything you could observe from the outside. That's not a limitation of her wealth. That's the point of it. Sign 6. They owe almost nothing to anyone. Step back and look at the country these people are navigating. Americans now carry over $1.1 trillion in credit card debt, a record. The average interest rate on carried balances sits around 22%. Roughly 6 in 10 cardholders carry a balance from one month to the next, meaning tens of millions of households are paying 22% annual interest for the privilege of having already spent money they didn't have. A balance left untouched, at that rate, doubles the effective cost of whatever you bought in a little over 3 years. The genuinely wealthy live on the opposite side of that equation. They often use credit cards heavily, for the points, the cashback, the miles, and then wipe the balance clean before the statement closes, so not a cent of interest can attach itself. Car loans rarely appear in their world because the car was paid for in cash years ago. Any debt charging more than their investments reliably earn gets eliminated on contact. The only debt they sometimes carry on purpose is a low fixed-rate mortgage locked in years ago, left in place because the math says the cash compounds better elsewhere. What you end up with is a person who owns nothing flashy and owes nothing to anyone. And that second part, the nothing owed, is a form of wealth that almost nobody talks about, but that changes everything about how a person moves through the world. Franklin retired from a career in HVAC at 61. No car payment, no credit card balance, a mortgage that has 14 months left on it. His monthly obligations total less than $400. To anyone running the surface math on his lifestyle, he looks like a man of modest means. To Franklin, every dollar that comes in is entirely his to direct, which, it turns out, is what $1.6 million in retirement accounts actually feels like from the inside. Freedom from payments is freedom. Full stop. Sign 7. They're calm when money goes wrong. Watch how a person reacts when an unexpected bill arrives. Financial pressure is a truth serum, and the reaction tells you almost everything. The transmission goes. The water heater floods the basement. The job disappears with 2 weeks of notice. For most American households, any one of those is an immediate 5-alarm emergency, because the median personal savings rate in this country has hovered near 4% of income for years, which is nowhere near enough cushion to absorb a real shock without disrupting everything else. The quietly wealthy meet that exact same news with something that looks, from the outside, like unusual calm. And that calm isn't temperament. It's not a personality trait. It grows directly out of a real emergency fund sitting somewhere quiet and accessible, large enough to make the problem annoying rather than catastrophic. Here's the detail most people miss about where that emergency fund actually lives. The genuinely rich keep their cash reserves in high-yield savings accounts currently paying around 4 to 4.5%. The national average savings rate at a traditional bank sits around 0.3%. Some of the largest banks in the country pay as little as 0.01%, a hundredth of a percent. The money is in the same product. The return is 30 times different. Put $25,000 in a competitive high-yield account, and it earns roughly $1,000 a year while you sleep. Leave that same $25,000 at a major traditional bank, and your return for the year is about $25. Same balance, same year, a $975 difference, before compounding. Rosario is a middle school science teacher with an emergency fund covering 8 months of expenses, held in a high-yield account she set up years ago and basically never thinks about. When her furnace died last February, the repair cost $2,200. She paid it the same day. The conversation about it lasted about 4 minutes, and she didn't mention it to anyone at work. That is what financial cushion looks like from the outside. It looks like nothing. Sign 8. They buy the good version once and then keep it for years. There's a pattern in how the genuinely wealthy shop that, on the surface, looks like spending more rather than less. They buy the well-made thing. They pay a real price for it. And then they keep it for 12 years, while the person running a performance of wealth churns through 3 cheaper versions and 2 trend-driven replacements, and spends more in total to end up with less. Cheap is only cheap the first time you buy it. The genuinely rich have internalized cost as a long-term number rather than a sticker price. Their homes fill up over time with older, excellent, deeply unfashionable things that simply don't break. When something does break, the first thought is repair, not replace. They tend to know a reliable cobbler, a good tailor, a mechanic who tells them the truth. To a culture trained to throw everything away and upgrade on a schedule, this looks almost eccentric, a little old-fashioned, maybe a little cheap. It's actually one of the more sophisticated spending philosophies in the list. It prizes durability over novelty, and it quietly saves a meaningful amount of money across decades of purchases that nobody ever notices being made. Isabel bought one high-quality winter coat 17 years ago from a brand known for making things that last. She's had it relined once. The color is not this season's color. She doesn't care. 3 of her friends have replaced their coats 4 or 5 times in the same window, chasing changing trends and making up for quality with quantity. Isabel has spent less on outerwear across those 17 years than any of them. The coat doesn't announce anything. That's the point. That's the sign 9. They've made complete peace with saying no. Pay attention to who can decline easily and who genuinely cannot. The genuinely wealthy are remarkably comfortable saying no to the small, socially pressured expenses that quietly drain everyone around them. The destination bachelorette weekend. The group dinner at the restaurant that doesn't fit this month. The upgrade everyone else is buying because everyone else is buying it. They pass on all of it without drama, without a long apologetic explanation, and without the visible guilt that most people carry when they turn something down. From the outside, this reads as not being able to afford it. The reality is the inverse. They can afford nearly all of it, which is exactly why they feel no pressure to prove it by showing up. Lifestyle creep is the most reliable wealth killer for high earners, and the quietly rich are largely immune. When their income climbed, their spending didn't follow. The gap that opened up between what they earned and what they spent got invested instead of inflated into a bigger life that costs more to maintain every month. Dominic received a significant promotion 3 years ago, a meaningful jump in salary. His apartment is the same, his car is the same, his lunch routine is the same. The entire raise now flows into his investment accounts before he ever sees it, the way the prior amount always did. To his colleagues who upgraded their lifestyles the moment their own incomes rose, Dominic can read as almost stubborn about living small. What they don't see is that he spends generously on the 2 or 3 things he actually cares about deeply, without a second of hesitation. And he goes completely silent on everything else. That selective yes, and the quiet, guilt-free no that enables it, is the discipline that funded a freedom they can't yet see. Sign 10. They've stopped trying to look rich because they are. This is the deepest sign, and the one that ties every other sign on this list together into a single portrait. At some point, the genuinely wealthy simply stop performing wealth, because the performance was always a substitute for the real thing, a signal sent in place of the actual security it was meant to suggest. And once you have the actual security, the signal becomes unnecessary. All the energy that other people route into looking successful gets redirected into things that don't photograph well at all. Time, flexibility, the ability to walk away from a job that's wrong, a client that's draining, a deal that doesn't feel right, the capacity to put a kid through school without touching a loan, to help a parent without it becoming a financial crisis, to take an ordinary Wednesday off without asking anyone's permission. This is the part the surface signals can never capture, and it turns out to be the whole game. What real wealth ultimately purchases isn't a better car or a louder address or a watch that gets noticed across a restaurant. It purchases the slow, unglamorous, genuinely irreplaceable freedom to live on your own terms and answer to no one for it. A person who has that looks around at the status race and feels no pull toward it. They're not broke. They didn't lose. They're simply done proving anything to anyone. And there's a specific, recognizable quality that comes with that. A looseness, a calm, an absence of the low background hum of money stress that follows most people through their entire adult lives without them even noticing it's there. Elena, A former logistics manager who retired at 58 after a career of boring, consistent investing, said something that stuck. I don't need you to think I'm doing well. I know exactly what my statements say. That's the whole sign. That's the whole list. Go back to that farmer's market from the opening. You can read it now, can't you? The Range Rover, the marble countertop renovation on a home equity line, the handbag that signals exactly what it's supposed to signal, a kitchen that's going to look incredible in photos, and that will spend the next 15 years draining the money that could have been building something real, and the woman in the decade-old Subaru with the canvas tote and the cracked bumper who doesn't say anything while she waits for her coffee, the one whose brokerage statement you will never see, the one who's been playing the quiet game for 20-something years and winning it in a way that doesn't show anywhere on the outside. You can see it now. All 10 signs are just one person, unremarkable car, modest house, clothes that tell you nothing, goes quiet when money comes up, has accounts you'll never know about, owes nothing to anyone, calm when things go wrong, owns excellent things and keeps them forever, says no without drama, and stopped needing to look the part a long time ago. Those aren't 10 separate habits. They're one person who understood, somewhere along the way, how money actually works, and made every surface decision flow from that understanding outward. That's the only real foundation underneath all 10 signs. Not discipline, not luck, not a salary. The mechanical understanding of how debt compounds against you while investing compounds for you. How the tax-advantaged accounts matter more than most people will ever act on. How to build systems that make the right choice automatic so you never have to rely on willpower you don't have on a hard day. Understanding that is where the quiet game begins. And the best moment to start it is always the same one. Right now.